sir. You're about to see something really special.
Really thought this part of my life was behind me. Frenzy disappeared with the drinking 3 years ago. Why now? This makes no sense, and I'm right on the verge of freaking out.
Back from your life.
These people can be animals.
What you burn.
Thingy's out.
Some bitter things you should never.
Good cheese.
Learn. Wallow through the days.
Remember, cosplay's not consent.
So here's to me. Congratulations, me. Yay, me.
This would all be so much easier if I was hammered. Hammered.
Won't be there
Right.
You can take away the anger, but you leave behind the pain. It's your soul I
New ventures are always scary.
feel till I'm melting
Blah, blah, blah. Something positive and uplifting.
tomorrow. But the hurt will still remain. In your soul I'll live forever till I'm melting in.
Don't miss our new film, The Love Song of William H. Shaw, coming soon to a streaming service near you. Hey everyone, this is Clif from Talking Pondo. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up about spoilers on the show. We do talk about the films in a certain amount of detail, so you may want to watch the film first and then come back if you're not a fan of spoilers. Also, every now and then there's a little bit of adult language, so we wanted to give you fair warning on that. We hope you enjoy the episode, and we really appreciate you listening.
Welcome to Making Pondo and Talking Pondo. Talking Pondo is a podcast where we pick out 2 movies each week and talk about them in detail. Making Pondo is a podcast where we talk to people we've made films with and we discuss all their experiences on set.
All right, Marty, we're back.
We are back.
Indeed. Episode 25, I believe, at this point?
26.
26. Okay, well, I'll always get it wrong, folks. Don't listen to me.
But we get to celebrate as if it was episode 25. Because the first documentary I was going to give you was going to be on like episode 20 or 25, and then we fixed the numbers. And so that ends up being 26. But let's celebrate 25 episodes.
Let's
with
do it.
My Best Fiend and Swingers. And Swingers was on my alternate list. It was the first movie that you picked that I got to check off of my list as well.
Ah, okay. Well, I thought it was a good lead into the Favreau universe of films. I mean, we could have gone with Rudy if we wanted to, but I thought Swingers was a much better choice.
Yeah, it's a better fit for the show. Better choice to start with.
Yep.
Starting with Maid would have been okay,
Yeah.
but it's a little odd. You know,
Yeah,
it's
it's a
not the
little
same.
odd. Yeah, and I don't think Maid has the same energy as Swingers. I wanted to start with something that he did that was a little more a little more popular because Zathura. I'm not gonna start with that either.
No.
But Chef maybe coming up. You know me and my cooking movies. Maybe Chef comes up soon. Who knows?
Yeah, Swingers is very indie, as are the films covered in the documentary My Best Fiend. So they have
Oh yes, very much so. Very much two different kind of. I wouldn't say auteurs. I don't believe in auteurs, but two people who very much were of singular vision trying to get their films made.
Right. And, as I finished watching both of these movies again this last week in preparation for the podcast, because that's what we do. We give each other a movie to watch each week.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's brand new to us. Sometimes we've seen it a bunch, but
I had
either
never
way,
seen
we're
My
talking
Best
about it.
Fiend. I had never seen it.
I'd only seen it one time prior.
Okay. Well, so let's start with My Best Fiend then.
Well, let me finish my goofy little rant here.
Sure.
As I was watching both of those films, I thought, well, what a couple of different movies here, right? What do these two have in common? Swingers and My Best Fiend. You couldn't pick two.
Wait. Let me guess.
Movies. But then you go, well, they're both about independent productions in a way.
Yes. Is there anything else?
Do you see the big one?
Hang on.
Crossover event?
I don't. Damn it! It's driving me crazy.
Jon Favreau and Werner Herzog would work together on
Oh, in The Mandalorian. Yep.
Mandalorian.
You're very
Star
true.
Wars
Yep,
would
yep.
bring these two forces together. No
Yep.
pun intended.
God,
you
how
know.
did I miss that?
Isn't that insane?
That is crazy.
But it kind of makes sense because Swingers is made very rough and tumble. And well, let's talk about which one you wanted to talk about first.
Oh, let's go with my Best Fiend.
All right.
This was a fascinating documentary. So it really was, and for the listeners, so early on in his career, Werner Herzog did some movies, and then he, I guess, was well enough known that he was able to start getting some cash together to make real films. And for some reason, he decided to film a bunch of them in Peru. Is that right, Peru? And so he decides to cast Klaus Kinski in Aguirre, Wrath of God, Fitzcarraldo, and what's the last one?
Oh, it's
I can't remember it. I think Fitzcarraldo's actually the last
another
one.
one of those one-word titles, and
Yeah.
Nosferatu was in there too.
Nosferatu also, yeah.
They don't talk about that one that much.
They don't.
But it's like Koizek or something. I know I'm saying
Yeah,
it wrong.
Wojciech. Yeah, Wojciech. And so they're singular films from the look of them. I haven't seen any of them.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those either. I've only seen Nosferatu.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen Nosferatu. But this insane relationship that develops between Kinski and Herzog is quite fascinating, and it's very much two artists trying to figure out a vision and also trying to kill each other at the same time. And look, I've watched this documentary and I thought about it. I feel like Werner, in the way the documentary is presented, he's kind of a hype man for the struggle between the two of them. He really plays it up, and he's trying to build a legend or some sort of legendary status for the two of them. There definitely feels like that in the film, but at the same time, when you switch to actual film of Kinski screaming at the production manager over food, it's hard to argue that stuff actually happened, right?
And Werner's just setting up for the next, until it's finally, will somebody be I thought one of you be the bigger person by now. And I want to be first.
Yep.
And then they snap back into the filmmaking process. It's like,
well, and Werner said, if I had gotten involved at that point, it wouldn't have been like he had focused his rage on one person, and the thing was to let him burn it out, and then just me just distract him by being a professional and getting him moving on with the process, right? Like,
right.
I mean, it sure looked like Klaus was kind of a, he was trying to build, and I really feel like this is probably more than a few actors. They build their persona of who they are, and that persona is not even close to actually who they are.
Right.
And it feels like Klaus was very much like that. And probably because they don't like who they are, they come from these lives that they don't like, and so they end up trying to, I mean, the weirdly, the old West was like that. You get in a lot of trouble and you change your name and head out to the West for a new life. It seems like these guys, not that they were in trouble, but they don't like their past lives and they're trying to change and become these new personas. And some of it's just full of shit. The idea that he's a naturalist and he loves, being out in the woods, and yet he never goes 100 feet from camp. And the one time he does, he has a photographer filming him, getting all cute on a log and shit was pretty hilarious. But also, a lot of this documentary isn't collaborated by a lot of people. A lot of it is Werner talking to people rather than asking them questions and sort of evoking answers from them, which was interesting. And it happens, here and there, but every now and then it's just Werner going, "Oh yeah, and we were really good friends," and you go, "Were you?" I don't know.
It reminded me of the Ed Wood movie where Bela Lugosi, bullshit, I'm ready to shoot now. It's like, I'm all agitated, so let's roll the camera.
Let's do it. Yeah. Well, he talks about that in the film where he says sometimes, I think it was the end of Aguirre where he talks about the big speech at the end of Aguirre, and Kinski wanted to do this giant explosion, and he said it's not a good idea. And so they had this giant fight right before the scene, and then he sent him onto the set exhausted from just emotionally exhausted from the fight, and he gave this exhausted performance, and he kind of knew like that's what Kinski needed to get where he needed to go. Don't like actors like that. I don't want to.
Oh, no,
I don't want to. I don't want to get into a fist fight with an actor to get a performance out of them. Like,
but those two particular had to spark each other to get those particular crazy results.
Is it? Do you think it was because? Do you think it's like the culture of being German and shit like that? Do you think that was what it was about, or was it just two artists just pushing?
I think it's just the.
Or was it two German artists just pushing?
Well, that too. Yeah. Who knows what? I mean, we didn't have the psychiatric that we have now.
Oh God! I mean,
so God knows what was going on that wasn't being left untreated with these wild. He was ranting for days on end, and it's like that sounds like there's issues that are. But back
mental
then,
issues. Yeah.
Like the 50s or the 60s, they weren't treating that then, and so what you end up with are these crazy looking movies that I haven't watched, but they do look very interesting.
They do look very interesting, and I need to watch them.
Shooting a gun into the tent where people were.
Yeah, the hell is that about?
Like, you talk about can't get away with that now. We thought Maximum Overdrive was bad with a splinter in the eye. They were doing shit like that. The boat. Let's get back on the capsized boat
dude.
And start filming.
Yeah, they got on a capsized boat that was capsized in a river, and they began filming.
To me, it looked like
what insurance approved this?
Yeah, for insurance, right? Now we look at movies safety first, right?
Right. Yeah. Hell yeah.
I look at it through their lens, and it seems like, oh, we're making a movie. We're going to war. If you get hurt, not only do you brush yourself off and keep moving, you're almost proud that you got hurt. I'm sitting there bleeding because my hands fucked up because of the camera.
Yeah.
And I'm still cheering you guys on to finish getting the goddamn shot.
Yeah, and saying that cameraman was literally saying you left too early in the shot, and Kinski was explaining that basically the boat's sinking and a wave's coming, and of course he's not going to stand there. And the cameraman's bitching at him, saying, "You should have stood there longer. What it would have been looked better."
And the lens
is insane. Yeah, the lens pops out of the camera, and dude, Fitzcarraldo alone. When I really looked at that, and I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? You guys actually dragged a boat over a mountain? It wasn't a mountain, but it was a massive hill.
Yeah,
and you filmed it. Like that's insanity."
It is. That stuff like that is why I wanted you to see this, just for the spectacle of it, because I figured, he's going to be like, "What in the fuck are you doing?"
Couldn't believe it. Honestly, I couldn't believe the part where Kinski's going to quit, and Werner Herzog says, "That's cool. Go ahead. I have a rifle in my tent, and I'll put 8 shots on you before you get out of range.
And the 9th bullet will be from me. And he realized that he wasn't kidding at that point. That's one of my...
And came back and finished the film.
What
in the hell?
One of my takeaways from the movie was that scene. It's the first part of the speech is what really gets me, where he's like, the movie is more important than our personal emotions, maybe even more than our persons. And it does make sense, because I used to... before making movies, something like that, I would have been like, oh, that's pretentious or whatever. But now I realize, oh no, that movie's going to be around a lot longer than you are, or any of this shit that's going on today.
Yeah.
And you're going to look back at that and be like, fuck, I fucked up. I walked off, or I screwed it up. And then it's like, he realizes, oh yeah, this is what we're doing. And I've got to put all that to the aside, because this thing could last for a very long time, and you want it to be as good as it can be. You want it to be a thing. So it's not really pretentious, because you don't know how long these movies are going to be around. But then it's funny how it switches into the whole mythos of and then the 9th bullet will be from me.
Yeah.
And he realized, and then he came back, and there was no more bullshit. He had to get it out of his system right there. And he knew, he's like, he has quit, and this is a sign that he is done. He had packed up the shit, and it's like, you can't You
Well,
can't go to the cabin right now, dude. You got to come back to the set.
that story where he talks about the native villagers, the warriors in the native village had the chief had offered to kill Kinski. It's like, you want him to kill him? We'll just kill him.
No.
And instead Werner's like, no, get on set. I want all that aggression on film. And so there's this great scene of, and Kinski's making some great faces, like that, because he's not looking at any of the warriors as they're shaking and pointing spears at him. Instead, he's looking around at the rest of the people at the table and making these odd faces, and it's really working. Like, it's really, really working. I need to see these films.
Yeah, it does make you want to watch.
Just for the peculiarity of it, I mean, there's that great early argument that he has with Kinski, where Kinski in Aguirre, Werner wants to do that long shot down the mountain of them walking, and it's cloud cover, but the cloud cover clears, and so the left side of the mountain is clear, and he's got that right side in fog. And if it was me, I would have been screaming woohoo, because it's a beautiful, like, left composition, right fuzz, to where you're really just watching these soldiers climb down this mountain and into frame. And Kinski's like, you got to do it in close up. You want to see me, and blah, blah. And Werner's just like, fuck you, off the set. And damn near blows the picture right there, because he pulls the star off the fucking set because he knows what he wants, and he knows he's not going to do any damn close-ups. It was really, wow. Okay. Yeah. And the shot looks great. I mean, it looks really, really good. That long snaking trail of soldiers coming down that mountain with the fog is a really good shot, man.
So it's almost like you could imagine Werner as a dinner for 5 guests.
Yeah.
He's up there just telling stories about being on set. I like how he talks about the book that Kinski wrote, and he's like, look, if I don't tell these stories, the people aren't going to buy the book. And it's like, oh, you're kind of peeling the curtain back, like, this is work, like you were saying earlier.
At the same time, he was also trying to kind of refute the book and say, "Oh, not everything Klaus was. Klaus was such an egomaniac, and
of course, you
got to put your own little spin on it, right? Yeah, yeah."
And they went back a long ways too, which is interesting. Like he saw that crazy spark very early on.
The beginning where Klaus is on stage pissing off Germans with this sort of antagonistic. I guess it's like it felt like a weird way of trying to bring Hitler back, which I don't think was going to, not in a good way, not in like I don't mean that in like a trying to start a party or anything, but like confronting the audience with that sort of personality and seeing what the audience would come back with. And the audience just refutes the shit out of it. Just fuck you, and gets on stage, and then he's calling himself Jesus, and they're getting up and refuting that too. And
it was
Klaus
just getting that, not causing a riot, but
it's this aggressive sort of cathartic performance art, I guess. And he's doing this tour around Germany doing it, which is like, this is like, what the hell?
Right.
And then, suddenly gets, I mean, he'd been in a bunch of movies, but then he gets hired into Herzog's thing, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good doc. I really, really enjoyed it. The Fitzcarraldo stuff in particular was very fascinating. Like getting this boat moving across a giant hill like that in the middle of Peru. And
it had to be the most challenging.
Yeah. Maybe it was Peru, maybe it wasn't, but it was definitely a sort of rainforest river area. And I want to say they said Peru, but I could be wrong. But he filmed a bunch of movies in that area, which was weird,
Yeah, it kind of made it to where, like, oh, we can go from, this is where this was shot, I'll tell you the story here, and then we go further down here, and this is where we shot this movie. So.
Which is, I mean, I guess he was just getting good rates down there, had good connections, and could fly down there, and had good. I mean, he shot what did he say? He shot Fitzcarraldo for $375,000.
Something like that.
To tow a boat over a hill, he spent $375,000. That's nothing. Maybe that was Aguirre, but I mean, that's even in the 80s. That's not a huge budget when you're shooting film. all that film that you're going to have to shoot.
Yeah, they didn't have digital equipment.
Yeah, if it's digital, you're like, sure, $375,000 sounds like a great budget. No, not in film. That's the film stock. Half of that's the film stock.
Yeah, I mean,
well, maybe a third of it.
for all I know, there are people making movies like this, but I don't know. Did anybody else ever make movies quite like how these two did? I mean, there's, like we talked before in Maximum Overdrive, that there was obviously a lot of danger on sets back in the day, and it's amazing there wasn't more injuries or things that were reported. But these four movies, well, especially the first three, feel like accidents just waiting to happen at every turn.
Well, there's that one part where he interviews that extra that talks about getting hit on the head with a sword because he was Clint Kinski was annoyed that they weren't moving and doing what they needed to on set, and he just hit the dude over the head with a sword, and he got cut over the head,
the food or something, and then he bang, and he's like, I still have the
you still have a mark on my head from it, yeah.
And then now that would be,
couple million dollar settlement,
lawsuits. And back then it was like, okay, let's do the next shot.
Very much so.
The battle scar. It was like, damn, you guys it's a whole different mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea of making a film and making art to that degree was a completely different battle than it is now. It's so much, it's so much easier in certain aspects, but it's also so much harder.
Right. Like those movies would still be incredibly difficult to make now, still trying to pull the boat over the mountain, but nobody would try to make it that cheap. Even if you could make it that inexpensive, somebody would still,
nobody would ever go into the jungle and try to tow a boat over a hill. They would that shit would go into digital so fast. Oh, we'll do that digitally. Don't worry. Just stand in front of the green screen while the boat goes by. You're fine.
And that's
it's different. It's different.
But it's got to be different.
It is just from seeing the stuff that we saw from the bits that he put in. It's different.
Yeah. Insane.
Yeah.
And then it kind of mellows out a little bit, like that last movie. He got more of a subdued performance because he drained himself completely on Nosferatu, and they only had 5 days before they started shooting.
Yeah.
The next one, so he was just
that's Wojciech. That's Wojciech. Yeah, which is it's a very weird looking film.
Right. They show us a oneer, right, where it's just
shot for like 8 or 9 minutes. Yeah,
just constant.
It's a good scene. I mean, he's come in. He's a Russian soldier, and he's come in and realized that he's gotten information that his girlfriend is sleeping with a different Russian soldier, and he's kind of the fool. And he comes in, and it's this very weird. It takes 7-8 minutes, maybe. It's a weird scene, but it's good. It's well played. But it's very much like a play still,
Yeah. That's also a way I bet they kept their costs down too, because if you can nail all of that in one,
sure,
you don't need any coverage, and if you can combine the most basic techniques with the more advanced dramatic techniques, if you can cram them together, it seems like you get some of the best results. You can work with two worlds.
Well, and it seemed like Werner was focused on one of two things: either getting a representation of what he was trying to show through some sort of either large shot or a panning shot, or some sort of thing that kind of covers the area, or he was writing on faces and really focused on getting the performance. Which, like Nosferatu, Wojciech, he's really not necessarily in on the faces, but he's staying on the actors and letting them perform in the scene rather than jumping to a different camera. Hey, cut, let's change the angle, that type of thing. He's just letting the whole scene play out. Reminds me of a little bit, I'd have to go back and look at it, but it reminds me a little bit of some of Jaws, where he lets those scenes play out just a tiny bit on the boat. Yeah. That type of thing. He cuts a little bit here and there, but he does let those scenes and those actors kind of work in the camera for a bit.
It kind of makes sense that he made a documentary about making those movies, because those movies kind of seem like they have the feel of a documentary in and of themselves. So,
but yeah, I mean, in the end, though, it really feels like it's it really feels like Werner's trying to build his own legend.
Well,
Like,
yeah, but at least he's winking at the camera while he's doing it, kind of.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. But I mean, and I know he's helping Klaus out to a certain extent, but it really feels like he's trying to build this legend of himself and Klaus and this.
And if the shoe had been on the other foot, you would expect the same thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. It feels a little self-aggrandizing, I guess, but it's fascinating as hell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is some fascinating shit in there. I would have walked off of Fitzcarraldo, easily. I would have walked off of Gear. I'm not putting up with that shit. But at the same time, I haven't seen them, but it looks like from the cuts, they got pretty good stuff.
Right. And then eventually, apparently, Klaus got so just kind of out there that they no longer really worked together. And then I didn't realize that he had been gone since 91.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, shit. That was a long time ago. By the time of this recording, even. It just seemed like Klaus Kinski had a movie coming out every week in the 80s there for a bit.
Yeah.
I always remember seeing him in the strangest films, playing just the oddball parts, not knowing any of this Werner Herzog stuff. Just
right.
A movie called Venom about snakes in the fucking vents. For that one. It's right up there of Alligator when they flush the alligator down the toilet and they come back. Giant 50-foot gator, that type of movie.
I remember that one.
It's like, oh no, he was really, involved in trying to make, serious, high art film. I don't know how else you describe something this, if you're putting that much of yourself into where you might not come back from the set, there's not much more higher stakes than that.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
wild.
He was in a bunch of stuff. I mean, he's got 137 acting credits on IMDb. I mean, he was in For a Few Dollars More. He shows up here and there all over the place. He's a great actor.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no questioning his ability. It's just what
Misty's
a wild...
known from the Million Eyes of Sumeru.
There you go. See. Oh, he was in Footprints on the Moon. That's nice. Anyway. So
was it like it wasn't like Cat People, but was there a movie like am I thinking something in the early 80s, like a real obvious
Wolfen maybe? Are you thinking like Wolfen or something? Let me see.
It could be the whole
Creature. You're thinking Creature, 1985?
Well, we might need an entire series of movies about werewolf films from 1981.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Creature was 85. He was in The Hitchhiker in 84. Nothing like he was in Venom in 81.
There's that Venom movie about the snakes.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all mixed up. Probably because the Malcolm McDowell's and Cat People. It's the Natasha Kinski connection. That's what I'm thinking. Are they related at all, or is it just the same last name? Probably just the same last name.
What am I, his biographer? I don't know.
I don't know.
Let me look up his biography.
Maybe
Hang on.
know this trivia.
Let's see. No, he doesn't. No, he has spouses, children, and parents, but no siblings.
So Natasha Kinski is not related to Klaus Kinski.
I mean, no. John Smith is not related to Jane Smith. They just
learn things every day here.
Exactly. Right.
Talking Pondo. And so, as hard as it is to rate a documentary, what did you walk away from this one with?
As a documentary, if you're just watching it as a person who's interested in documentaries, it may wander for you a bit here and there.
Yeah, as most do.
But if you really like documentaries about film and filmmaking and the struggle of artistic shit, you're really going to like this one. I'd give it a solid 3. I'd give it a solid 3, maybe a 3.5.
Yep, I give it a 3 as well.
Yeah,
because
it's right there.
Very good, but it does have some,
It seems a little self-aggrandizing. Some of the things that he says aren't correlated much. He just says them off cuff, and then there's no witnesses to back him up. There's nothing else. Yeah. But there's also stuff that is in there that he just cuts to the camera and shows it. So, how much of it's fairy tale, how much of it's real, well, who knows? But it's fascinating to watch. It's extremely fascinating to watch.
Yeah. just it this one and that Jim Carrey Man on the Moon documentary is
Yeah, I'd
two
like
of the
to
more
watch that one
interesting
again.
actors off the rails, kind of,
Yeah.
because I'm trying to create this movie
Yeah.
feeling, and nowadays you just can't make a movie like that. People they'll shut you down so fast.
That was the other thing. It does have that it's got that I Heart Huckabees vibe to it, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, it does. And if you don't know what we're talking about, YouTube the I Heart Huckabees Lily Tomlin meltdown.
Oh,
There's
yes.
several clips, and wow.
Yeah, I've never seen Dustin Hoffman slowly sneak his way off stage one step at a time. It's fucking great.
And you watch I Heart Huckabees, and you have no idea there was tension on set. So
yeah. And there's rumors that directors had problems beyond that with other films in general, but
yes,
it just feels like that same thing of like, so some actors need a rub. Some actors and directors need some antagonistic thing to make to feel like what they're making is, I don't know, the best of what it can be or whatever.
It's like in the Making of Medea episode from Entourage, where he's screaming at the actors when they're doing their read-throughs and casting. He's all, "Ah!" The other guy's like, "Ah!" It's like it's so ridiculous over the top, but it's it's the most heightened example of, what kind of crazy shit do you really need to put yourself through? Doesn't it go back to that, talking of Dustin Hoffman again, that Marathon Man story of, well, you just act, right? When that, giving away the punchline of that story about how Dustin Hoffman would exhaust himself, and then Sir John Gielgud is
what are you doing? You just have to act. Why are you exhausting yourself? Just act. You don't
have to do all that. You just show up, and then you should be able to exude it without having to. But see, it's different processes, though, right? Yeah. I've come to accept them all, and interestingly enough, we haven't had any real actors. Well, I don't mean to say real actors. I mean to say to have anybody come on our set and really be.
We haven't had any actors been over the top,
technique or anything. That's what I mean. Yeah,
Bradford's the closest I think I would have seen to that, and he's very easy to work with as far as giving. He just has questions. He just needs you to help him get his mind in the right place, and then he tunes the instrument himself.
Yeah, but we certainly never really had any experience with any actors coming on set and being.
Yeah, I don't want to work with that shit. I don't.
That challenge hasn't really presented itself. Yeah. We've weeded some people out in casting.
Yes. And God bless Werner for not just punching him straight across his mouth, because I'm not sure I could have done something like that. That's that's disrespectful to everybody who's working.
Oh yeah.
But of course, this is back in the 70s and the 80s where that type of thing was a little bit different.
Yeah. And it's international as well, so different cultures. And,
big. Well, and you got your big star, and your big star's throwing your big fit, and that's that's how it works, right? It's Hollywood.
Werner was like, "No, this movie's getting finished," and all of those movies got not only went into production, they all got finished.
Oh yeah,
and it seems like they're all critically acclaimed on top of it. So
Fitzcarraldo's got an 8 stars on IMDb, so I mean, it looks like it's pretty good. Yeah, I forgot to pull that one up eventually.
So for further research, you can watch the movies that they discussed in that movie. So we watched Ed Wood a few weeks ago, and I said, has there ever been another movie that's been about the making of 3 movies? Well, we had this documentary that's about 5 movies. So yeah. Weird how that all tied in.
Anyway, so 3 stars, solid documentary. Yeah. If you like it, I really suggest you jump in. Moving on,
worth seeking out.
I gave you Swingers.
So we go from 1999 backwards to 1997 again. So Clif has thrown me back to the year of Grosse Point Blank once again for what I call the Clerks of the late 90s.
The Clerks of the late 90s. Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
I feel like it was that impactful, and it picks up off of that. Well, let's tell the listeners at home or wherever they might be, what is Swingers and what is it about before I start dissecting it?
Well, so Swingers is about a guy who moves out to L.A. to be a comedian, and he's left his girlfriend behind and broken up with her, and he can't get over her. and he keeps mooning over her, and his friends keep trying to get him to basically forget about her. And that's basically what the movie's about. It's about a guy named Mike who's moved out to LA, and
he's got a small group of friends out there that he hangs out with.
Friends. Yep.
They're always trying to go and hook up. It's
he's trying to move on for a breakup. He's a wannabe actor and comedian, and he's got his supporting friends with him. And that's basically what it is. Starting on, go ahead.
Oh, it was a vehicle for Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau to help launch their careers a bit, right?
Oh, dude, this is close to being what I like to call a Nexus movie. Like Ron Livingston's in this. He's got a big career. You've got Vince Vaughn. You've got Jon Favreau. You've got several of the small supporting cast did really well. Alex Desert. I don't want to say his name wrong. Patrick Van Horn. I don't know really much what he did, but Brooke Langston did pretty well. Heather Graham was great.
Oh yeah,
they're both
in The Replacements. Both her and Favreau.
Yeah. So there's a great cast there that continues on and did pretty well. And it was one of those movies where it was like
resume pick.
All these young actors that were just about to explode, and a lot of them did.
And it's such I call it the Clerks of the late 90s because it's such an interesting time period to land in, because
it's mid 90s. It's 96. It's not
97, 97 where it still has, it's got swings. So that's automatically giving me the vibe of going not to the late 90s, but right as close as you can get before we're like in the Matrix and Phantom Menace and all that shit. But
IMDb's got 96.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, so there's a Brazil release date of 97.
One year further. That makes even more sense in a way that it would be 96, because you have what they call, and I'm sure you can at me or whatever if I get this wrong, but it's kind of like the mumblecore that started up where you have, what is it, like was it Soderbergh first in a way, and then
Sex, Lies, and Videotape. Yeah,
that leads to the Richard Linklaters.
Yeah.
Which leads to the Robert Rodriguez's, which leads to the Kevin Smiths, which leads to the Tarantinos. I'm not even going to talk about the B-movie things, which I feel ties into this. That's a whole different tangent. But then after all of those, you get Favreau gets the pop, and he gets to reference like all of these other guys, even John Singleton, because they've already broke through, and now he's pulling from
but he's also
his own thing. And it's kind of like he's the last before like the digital revolution kicked in, right? He gets to come in and go, and now I'm the capper of the 90s type.
That's I wouldn't say capper, but he's definitely the height of that I think he's sort of the crescendo as it began to fall.
And Doug Liman, the director of this, is kind of that too, because he made Go, and that feels kind of like one of those type of movies a couple years later. Then he'd go on to make Bourne Supremacies. And
I was going to say, Doug Liman's a hell of he made Edge of Tomorrow, he just made that new Roadhouse movie that came out. Why the hell he did that, I don't know.
There he is all the way back, directing Swingers, which talk about how they made this movie. It was made in just different little sections and in live locations. And like the whole beginning, when they go to Vegas, it feels like, okay, we shot that. That's like one little mini movie. And then, you know what I mean? Like, small locations, small crew, a good concept of moving from bar to bar, place to place.
How the hell they got away with shooting in Vegas? That's impressive for the small budget that this film had. They figured out how to find a casino small, and they wrote the script around it being a small casino.
And it was still that disappointing. We could do it.
Budget was $200,000 estimated, son.
Yeah, pre-internet, there wasn't. You could do that. Then you could walk in and steal a location.
200,000 estimated. Are you kidding me?
And it's all on camera. As
every bit of it.
One of the best. Here's another good example of what I was saying earlier. One of the most basic devices, but you're putting one of the most advanced techniques in. He's talking on the phone and doing the cringy answering machine messages, but it's one location, it's one actor, and you just go. And so you're getting these great moments out of it, but it's done in the most simplistic way, and that's why it works, I think. That's why it's showing like, look, we can do this. Give us work.
Yeah,
Let us make made and stuff.
There's 2 answering machine bits in the movie, and they're both great.
Mm-hmm.
One at the beginning and one at the end.
Oh, the one at the beginning I call Electric Dreams Part 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's great. You know, one of the things I noticed, which I found, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but in the apartment scene, while he's talking to Trent early on, the very first 10 minutes of the movie, he goes in to check the fridge, right? Like he's on the phone, he goes in to open the fridge, and what does he do? He turns the light off, and then he opens the fridge so that the light in the fridge is illuminating him lighting wise, right? Then he closes the fridge, and as he comes back into the living room, he flips on the light to the kitchen dining room area. So so suddenly there's a light behind him that illuminates him, and then he goes back in later and turns the light off and checks the fridge again. And so it's an interesting way of watching an actor sort of control the lighting in his, and I'm sure it was part of like, hey man, turn this off when you come in. Hey man, because we're going to open the door and it's not going to play right. But he does a very good job of like doing it sort of absent-mindedly, like turn it off, come in, turn it on, fridge, boom. And it really works, and it lights the scene very well. I noticed that earlier. I was like, oh, I wonder if I'm sure they blocked that way. Like I'm sure that there was for a reason. It's fantastic.
I'm going to say this is a contender for the most 90s movie.
Oh, it's very 90s.
Of all.
It's
because it encapsulates so much of the decade in one film. Yeah.
It really jumped on that big band phase. Like it really, it nailed that like big voodoo daddy exploded right after that. Yeah. It feels very, very 90s. Yeah.
Much like Grosse Point Blank, but in a different way. It feels like characters. This time it doesn't feel like people from the 80s pretending to make a 90s movie. This time it feels like characters who are from the 80s that kind of skipped over anything culturally that happened for the first 5 years of the 90s. Oh, you don't want that grunge stuff. You want to be over here and, in the nice casino and stuff. And it's like, oh, yeah, they're right still in their Frank Sinatra mindset. So they're more of the Friends coffee house people.
Yeah, it feels to me like people who didn't get into the grunge phase and hit out until they found their own thing, which was this big band swing aesthetic. But it also, I mean, they do a very good job of making it feel very LA very early on. Yeah. All those blurry photos all over LA, and then you reinforce it with all these cool locations.
Yeah, I didn't get Goofy back because Disney. It's funny now he works for Disney making Star Wars. And back then it was more of like the not as big a deal. And he's like, hey, at least it's Disney. Because did you get your? I said told my parents I didn't get my Deep Space Nine.
At least it's Disney. I mean, this is the guy that basically created the Marvel franchise off of one movie with Robert Downey Jr.
Right. And Peter Billingsley.
The guy's a fucking genius. I'm a big, big fan of Favreau's. I think he's really, really fucking smart, and he's figured out the business, and he knows what people want to watch.
And 40 minutes in, it's dinner for 5. Because they're literally having that speech where they're all sitting around, they're talking about the movies, and even brings up Tarantino, and it's like, now we're getting.
He also brings up the Scorsese walking through the back of the restaurant shot, and then he recreates it 30 minutes later.
Well, yeah, and they do the Reservoir Dogs thing too, the slow mo.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun little homages there, and I love how he shits on Tarantino in the middle. He's like, "Oh, Tarantino steals everything from Scorsese." I'm just like, "That's fantastic."
Yeah, it's very interesting to have all that stuff in this movie, because I feel it's like, oh yeah, that was all the scene right there, and then you're there in like 95, 96 shooting this thing, pulling all of your influences, but also that's all touched everything too. Like, what was it, Judgment Night? When we watched that, I remember saying all we had to pull from at that point was Reservoir Dogs So it was just a Scorsese pull from Try Wannabe. But if Judgment Night had come out in like 97 or 98, it probably would have more of a make it like Pulp Fiction, you know. So it's just interesting.
Right. That's interesting. It is. I want to say that we all know a Trent. Trent is the character played by Vince Vaughn.
No, it's funny. I was just about to talk about that character.
Yeah, Trent is the wannabe ladies man. And not even wannabe. He is a ladies man. But Trent is the guy who thinks he's got it all together. He's a ladies man. But we all know a Trent. And having a Trent in your life can be a good thing. I mean, you know, Trent can bring you good things. He can bring you fun parties and he can bring you good times. But there has to be limits with a guy like Trent. And this movie is about realizing that your friends, especially the cool ones like Trent, are as full of shit and as clueless as you are.
Yeah, so it's like Repo Man in that respect.
They can give you advice on things like how to act cool or, you know, how to talk to a girl, but they suck at actually helping you solve your life problems. Not that they don't try, though. They're good friends. They try to help you.
But this is American Graffiti.
But they're immature children in the end. And and if you watch the movie, Ron Livingston is the guy giving him good advice, sitting with him going, dude, look, the minute that you get over her, she's going to call. That's how it works. And then he goes with fucking Trent and Sue, and it's like, you just need to talk to pretty babies, and we just need to get you in front of this guy. You're so fucking money, and he kind of buys into it a bit because he watches it work for them. But it's two really good looking dudes who are just kind of surfing their 20s. Like that type of attitude for a guy in his 20s works, but when you get into your 40s, it's fucking lame and it's kind of creepy. You know, when you get in your 50s or 60s, it's even weirder unless you got a fuckload of money, right? So.
Oh wow, you're really enforcing my point here.
Sorry, I didn't mean to overwrite it, but it's just
you're enforcing it.
It's you know, it's that whole thing of like your friends really are there to help you, but at the same time, be careful of the advice they're giving you. You know, be careful of the things that you're listening to because you've got this guy over here giving you this great advice, and you've got these friends over here to try to. Yeah, they might drag you into some fun, but it's at the end, it's probably not going to do what you want it to do, which is provide you with some sort of new beginning, right?
Right. So the Trent character is it's basically how the character Dennis from It's Always Sunny, I think that's how he sees himself as being Trent, which is even funnier because the older he gets, the less it works. Unless he has money, which he has access to the money, but it's kind of why that show gets funnier because he's still trying to be a Trent character and he's in his 50s now.
Right.
And I was just like, oh, this would have been a movie that those characters would have idolized and tried to emulate early on, not realizing, no, you're not supposed to emulate the douchebag.
Yeah, that's a moment in time. It's you're supposed to learn from it, you know.
It's almost like a road movie. In a way, the way
early on, yes, early on, the trip to Vegas definitely makes it a bit of a road movie. Yeah, Vegas, baby.
Yep, Vegas, baby, Vegas. Yeah,
I love how they stroll into the casino, and I love how they stroll into the casino all like, we're gonna, you know, here's how it works, man. We're gonna put chips down. The pit boss is gonna find us, and we're gonna comp us. And they roll in. It's just this dead casino.
Yeah.
And then the first table they walk up to is the only guy who's actually betting any real money, and they just kind of crash it and immediately fall back to the old lady table. Yeah. And by the way, the old lady who wins, I think that's his mom.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that in the credits too.
Yeah.
It's interesting because hadn't Jon Favreau already made movies like Rudy and been on Friends at this point? So he'd had.
I don't know. Had he been on Friends at this point?
I think so. I think he had done his stint as the guy who wanted to be the UFC fighter.
I thought that was after Swingers.
Pulling from all those experiences, hey, it might have been right around the same time. Who knows? But it might have been right when he was starting to blow up. But
Sure.
we know Rudy was earlier.
Yes,
Rudy
definitely.
was like 93, so it was like they got experience, and then they made this movie, and they made it right because that's how you do a debut film. You know, they've both gone on to make much better movies if that's what you're supposed to do. But this is to show up and go, I have a technique, I have a voice, and get some work.
Mm-hmm.
And they've worked steady since. You don't
Yeah.
see a whole lot of Vince Vaughn, Jon Favreau projects together anymore, as they've kind of done their own thing. But I think that was probably the plan anyway. It was more of a, let's just get this shit started.
Yeah, I like the film quite a bit. You know, that scene when they're in Las Vegas and he makes the call to his ex-girlfriend, he basically just kind of blocks himself and Trent. And Trent's a good dude. That he proves that he's a good guy. He's like, because later on when he's peeing on the side of the highway and they're talking about it, he's like, I don't care, man. I didn't really even like that girl. It was the idea of you just kind of getting over her by meeting someone and maybe, you know, having a connection with someone else, physical or whatever connection with someone else that puts you past this rut that you're in with this girl and you can't get over. And I get it. I've been there. Look, that scene where they're playing video games with Sega Genesis and hockey, that is so just dead on. Like the writing is just so spot on. Like you and I have sat there listening to Street Fighter 2 beefs over and over again on Super Nintendo, man.
And the personal connection to this is, you know, obviously these things didn't happen to us, but there's versions of these things where there's a scene where he pulls the gun on the gangbangers, and then 20 minutes later, if even that, all the gangbangers are now friends with everybody. They love Trent, and they're all playing video games together. They all think that he's the coolest, and it's like, that's real.
That's real. And all that shit just really struck as very genuine. You watch Trent be an ass in this movie, and for most of the movie, it works. Like he and Sue are these kind of dickheads, but it seems like women are super attracted to that. And I, you know, it's funny because, you know, like, dude, that's going to turn on you later on, and you're going to just, you know, end up being that guy. The redhead with the cigar. She's in Starship Troopers, dude. And was on an episode of Frasier. I was like, oh, she's on Frasier. I completely forgot about that. So, and there's that band that comes in. The guy and his wife that are the Lounge Act.
Oh yes.
I can't remember who that is. But they were very famous back then, or popular. Marty and Elaine. Right? Doing Staying Alive.
Nope.
It was terrible. And then, of course, you've got that great "How do I kill the fucking bunny" speech. You know, you're like this fucking bear with these claws, and you're just batting at this bunny, trying to figure out how do I kill the fucking bunny. You're so money, you don't even know it. There's some good shit there.
So there's one thing I really wanted to talk about in the movie. If you have a minute, do you have a minute to talk about the club?
The what?
The club.
Which club?
You know, the club. You put it on your car to keep people from it. Wow. You want to talk about something from the past, guys. Now, there was this device called the club that you put on your car to keep people from stealing it, and I don't think I've ever seen another movie that showed the club as prominently as this. Another of the ultimate 90s part of the film.
Well, and
have a minute to talk about the club.
And we probably need to be a little more descriptive. The club was this weird device with hooks and a lock in the middle of it, and you unlocked it, and then you ran the hooks through either side of your steering wheel at 180 degrees, right? So like if, you know, imagine you're looking at your steering wheel and the top point of it is north and the bottom part of it is south, you ran this weird device through the round handles of your steering wheel and then locked it in. And then you walked away thinking, nobody's going to steal my car now. Didn't work very well.
Yeah, I had one.
Yeah.
Pretty gimmicky, you know.
Yeah.
Still more of a deterrent than anything. You'd hope somebody would see that and be like, I'll just find a car that doesn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
I can get past it, but why do I want to dick with it? Yeah.
I mean, you probably could have done the same thing, just putting a bunch of blinking LED lights around the windows of your car or something,
So about what time period did the club kind of become obsolete as
late 90s.
Yeah, the technology had gotten better with
Yep.
anti-theft devices. But yeah, the club, that cracked me up.
Yeah, that's hilarious. The again, the Scorsese walkthrough through the back of the club when they get into the swing band night was really great. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
I read that
also very 90s into where, I don't want to say they were going to make this today, but usually don't see movies about people who are this much of an asshole. You get more softer characters, it seems like nowadays.
I mean, I would say that the main character isn't, but I would say his friends are.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's got that, and even Trent and Sue aren't that bad of an assholes. They're just sort of mired in their own shit, in my opinion, because they're really good. They're really good friends. They worry about him constantly. They're constantly thinking about his best interest to a certain extent. It's just that the advice they offer is fucking terrible.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what somebody who wasn't even 20 yet would think of this movie nowadays. What they would take away from it. Would they be like, oh, the whole thing's cringy? Or, no, I get it. I have friends like that too. Like, things like that stay the same.
Yeah. I mean, Trent's the kind of guy who says the best way to get over a girl is to get under another one, or something like that. I mean, that's the type of, oh, you want to forget about her? Go have sex with another girl. That's how you do it. That's Trent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not Mike. Mike's like, yeah, I could, but without some sort of connection or some sort of other thing, it's really not going to, it's just going to make me feel cheap and like I'm cheating or whatever the hell is in his thought process. Right.
So he's E and Vincent Chase in one.
I guess.
And Johnny Drama because he can't get work.
I read that Stephen Gaghan and Mike White are both extras in scenes in this movie. Stephen Gaghan. Yeah, they got Gaghan. Yeah. Gaghan, of course, doing Traffic and some others. Mike White doing that new HBO show.
Oh.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nexus movie. It's definitely launched a lot of careers there towards the middle. Yeah, 96. Yeah, that's mid. That's mid 90s, leaning towards the. It's definitely more mid.
I will say that dance scene's pretty good. Heather Graham is beautiful in that 40s garb. She's that hairstyle and that outfit really compliments her. And the dance sequence is well done. Trent and Sue, my favorite part of that whole thing is when they cut to the reaction shots of Trent and Sue and they're just looking like so confused and almost kind of grossed out that he's dancing with this girl.
Yeah.
Where they're just like, the fuck is going on? Really? You can dance? And it's fantastic. It's one of my favorites.
He found his niche finally. They just need to join Swing Club. Swing Choir.
And then of course we go to the restaurant at the end of the movie where in the end we really get to see Trent and Sue kind of fucking what kind of maniacs they are when they're drunk and sort of out of control. And we've all seen those three guys at a Denny's or a Waffle House at some point where you come in and there's these three loud assholes who are throwing fries at each other and shit. That's those three guys.
Now, I haven't seen this movie in a long time, but I saw some comparisons to it. People were saying this was the most original indie since Diner. Does this have anything in common with Diner from 1983?
A little bit, but I think Diner's more. I'd have to watch Diner again, but when I remember Diner, it's much more of a smaller film as far as locations and things like that go. I mean, Favreau pulls off a lot of locations and for $200,000, it's very surprising. Yeah, he gets a lot of value for the money he's spending. So maybe I'm not sure. I haven't. Maybe one to come up in our list here soon because I haven't seen that one in a while.
Right. Yeah, it's been so long it would feel like a first watch.
My favorite part of the movie is at the end where he gets up after he talks to Heather Graham, he gets the number, he puts it aside because he's not going to call her because he's made that mistake and gone through the second answering machine bit, which was a nightmare and also very funny. And so he wakes up in the morning with a big smile on his face, rolls out of bed, picks up the card, and waits. And then as he's gonna call her, she calls, he answers, and it's not her, it's his girlfriend. Of course his girlfriend calls, because now he's ready to talk to a different girl. Which is exactly what the lore of the film's been saying, But Heather Graham calls while the call's going on, and what does he do? He goes back, he apologizes to his girlfriend who's been mooning over the whole movie and says, I gotta go. And she goes, okay, and he just hangs up on her right in the middle of I love you. And from that point on, it's like, that's the whole point of the movie. Relationship over. We're done here. Have a good night. See you. Bye. And it's really well done.
Nice to finally watch a decent high def version of the film too. I'd only ever seen it on the old 90s DVD.
Yeah, I had a problem with my copy, so I had to revert to the DVD. Unfortunately, I have a Blu-ray, but for some reason it's not playing right, so went back to the DVD. But it was fine. I enjoyed the film. I highly recommend that one. It's a lot of fun. It's like you said, it's a perfect representation of some of the '90s indie guys: Rodriguez, Tarantino, Smith, Favreau.
Yeah, it's like, hello, they all started. Now here I am. Because after him, we start to go into the late 90s into the early aughts, and the scene switches again. So,
yeah, completely
switches along with it too. Now he's making Star Wars with Robert Rodriguez,
and he's crushing it. I mean, the dude the guy's concept for the Mandalorian brought back a whole plethora of shows. Ridiculous.
Not to mention his Dinner for Five show from IFC, which started shortly after this, or they made this and then that show came on, something like that. I think
so. Yeah. I mean, if you haven't seen Dinner for Five, by the way, look it up on YouTube. It's basically
find it somewhere.
Yeah, it's basically him and some filmmakers and actors sitting down and eating dinner and talking about stuff.
Kind of like the one little part of this movie where I was like, hey, that's going to be a TV show one day.
The one where he has Kevin Smith and Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner on.
Oh, from the Daredevil time period.
Yeah, when I originally watched that, I was like, Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck are in a relationship, because she couldn't contain herself. Like, she kept looking at him, and it was just like, oh, it's really obvious. It's super obvious. And sure enough, later it ended up being announced.
So it's been so long. Is Jon Favreau in that Daredevil movie?
Yeah, he plays.
So he's been in Marvel before Iron Man. I'm putting all this together right now.
Yeah, he plays Matt's backup lawyer, Ollie.
Wow.
Yeah, I think his name is.
No relation to Happy.
Or Ozzy or Ollie. We're gonna get pilloried in the comments.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that'll come up on the podcast. You never know.
So what do you give this one?
I go back and forth on this one. I think it's an accurate and kind of archaic representation of male dating in the 90s. It's hilariously funny. It's a lot of fun. It's indie as hell. It's well made. 3.5 stars is where I'm going to go. I can't give it 4.
No.
But it's a solid movie. I've watched it to death. So there are certain scenes that I just can't watch anymore, like the one where he walks up and he bets at the table with the guy who's betting $100 a hand. Like the awkwardness of that, I'm just like, I've lived through that enough. I can't watch that anymore. But for the most part, the film's just great. It's a fun rewatch.
Yeah, I've seen it a little bit more than Grosse Pointe Blank, but really only a handful of times throughout the years, so it doesn't really have a strong nostalgia hold to me or anything. It is an interesting time capsule to look back on it, and I like it a little bit more each time I watch it. And I'm starting to finally remember the whole movie rather than what happens next in this movie. Now it's like, oh, now I know the plot, but 2.5, because they did a very solid introductory I was thinking about my ratings, and 2 stars is kind of like my borderline. If I give it 2 stars, I'm like, it was average, just didn't do anything for me. If I give it below 2 stars, I probably didn't like the movie. But anything above 2 stars, like 2.5, I liked it. There was enough there to where.
Yeah.
I guess with the 2, I'm just kind of.
Yeah, 2.5 is I'm kind of mad about it. Yeah.
But there's some parts in there, especially from a filmmaker's perspective of just how they went in and captured all the little pieces and strung it all together and fucking hit gold with it. So
I mean,
the movie itself was money.
Yeah, for film, for $200,000, for Vegas, for LA, for everything they got out of it, for all the quality they got out of it, the quality actors,
up against the other indie films, 3.5. Yeah,
I mean this damn thing stands out easily for and so easily 3.5. Yeah, I like that film quite a bit, and Favreau's just a fantastic actor. But anyway, we'll stop talking about that. So right. I guess that brings us to next week's selections.
Next week, as we go into what is this?
I have a
7 next week.
I have a screwball from left field for you. I have a coworker's pick.
Oh, And I have something that was brought about because of the choice of Swingers.
Interesting.
Which bumped something else.
I have a coworker's blind pick. I've never seen this film before.
Oh, fun. Okay, what is it? What am I watching? What are you watching?
You're watching a little film called Predestination.
I don't even know what that is.
Predestination. It's a film starring Ethan Hawke and Sarah Snook.
Well, Ethan Hawke, it's tying right into our 90s indie.
Mm-hmm.
How old is this film? Is this new?
This is 2014.
Oh, so this is
my coworker claims this is the greatest sci-fi time travel movie of all time.
Oh, we're getting some time travel in here.
And I immediately was like, whoa, you're talking Back to the Future, you're talking Looper, he's like, yep, all those better. I'm like, okay. So, Bruce Garrick, the challenge has been accepted.
Wow, another strange wild card film gets thrown out. So, as we near closer to the conclusion of season 1 of Talking Pondo, I had a group of films that were relating to things coming up in the future, and that's still happening. Let me be real vague about that. But one of those got bumped to the side because I realized, okay, that's kind of redundant, and Clif had me watch Swingers, which I would have eventually brought up anyways, but since it came around, I felt like, well, as I'm sitting here watching Swingers, there's only 1 week to talk about this movie. And I don't even know if you've even seen the thing before. I've only watched it once myself. And it feels like one of those movies we would have watched on cable in the early 90s late at night.
Oh, like, shit, you're dipping into the muck for this. What is this thing?
1993's Amongst Friends is your film.
Amongst Friends.
A movie that was from the director and writer Rob Weiss, who you might know as being the real-life Billy Walsh when he was a hotshot young filmmaker, and he made this movie that went to the film festivals, made a big deal out of them. Well, this is that movie in real life, Amongst Friends. It's hard to find on physical media. You can watch it on Prime. I watched it on Tubi about a year ago, and it's interesting, but it does have that feel of something we would have caught on cable in the early 90s, like not quite Boys in the Hood vibe, but kind of along that, where it's like, well, anyways, it'll be interesting to see if you get a kick out of it, because much like Swingers, it's got that kind of... Apparently, it's about 3 bored Long Island buddies seek excitement on the streets with perilous results.
Amongst Friends.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen it before, but it's been a very long time if I have. It'll be a brand new movie. That's almost like it's almost like 2 blind picks in a row.
It really kind of is. So that should be an interesting lineup. And I went back and forth, but then I thought this one pairs really well with Swingers. So like now or who knows when.
Do you think this episode will be out by the time that we're on Reels of Justice? Or
Oh,
after? I think
this
it's going
should
to be after.
Quite after. I would even think the episode about Near Dark and the late game that we hyped would be after.
Yeah. So, just so you know, folks, we just came out of that, and it was,
Oh, it's from that time period. We just did our
it was
Twilight
interesting.
episode.
It's very interesting.
That was fun.
Yeah, very fun.
I had a blast on that.
Hopefully,
Still
we can get some of
reeling
those-
from it for your dad jokes.
Hopefully, we can get some of those guys on here and do some movie swaps. That'll be fun.
Exactly. Start to expand the format out a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, all right, man. That's what you're. I mean, predestination amongst friends. You got it.
Yeah, you're gonna watch that movie and go, "Oh, I see why I'm watching this." So we went
Kind
from
of like,
My Best Fiend
why
to-
I showed you the late game, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. All right then. Well, next week then.
Yep. Well, you'll hear us then.
Later, brave listeners. Later, Marty.
Thanks. Support the show on Buzzsprout for only $3 a month. Give us a 5-star review on Spotify or the platform of your choice. And be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube page.